exist among us, and sometimes they win. Even the devil was an angel once. The world has its own rules, and these rules are not human. Some of us seek answers to the origin and existence of cryptids and the unexplained. Join us as we venture beyond the known and accepted boundaries. Welcome to our nightmare. I think you're going to like it. Hey folks, good evening and welcome to another episode of Phantoms Monsters Personal Reports, where I narrate, discuss some of the cryptid and unexplained sightings and encounters submitted to Phantoms Monsters and the Phantoms Monsters Fortean Research team. So thanks for joining me. Phantoms Monsters radio channel is made possible by you clicking on the subscribe and like buttons and by you sharing our programming. Super chat and super thanks donations are appreciated. And you can click the dollar icon located below the chat box. Buy Me a Coffee link is also available. So thanks for your consideration. I want to thank and welcome all new members to the channel, as well as first timers in the chat. If you're listening to me for the first time, please like and subscribe to the channel. Set your notification and bell icon so you receive word when new presentations are going live or being posted to the channel. Now, if you're in the chat and have a question, please use all caps. I'll try to get to each and every one of them after the presentation. And I'll let you know when I'm on the last account so you can start posting your questions. So tonight's going to be a bit different. I've got one very long account that was almost in a series. It was an individual I was communicating with. And well, you'll see. It's an interesting story. Basically, a Tennessee family who lived near the land between the lakes experiences a variety of unsettling phenomena. As time goes on, the husband gives detailed account of the activity along with updates. I'll also detail a very bizarre incident in which the witnesses experienced an abomination while at the land between the lakes recreational area. Over the years, I've received many requests to post and talk about the strange and unexplained activity in the land between the lakes area. I'll let you decide how dangerous this region really is. So if you have questions, feel free to post them in the live chat, and I'll do my best to answer each and every one of them. So let's start off. The witness states, I moved my family and I to a home way out in the woods in Tennessee. I wanted to be brief here, but I need to get this off my chest. And after looking into this matter a little more, I have a lot more details that I think will paint a clear picture in the end. So please bear with me. The nights here can be extremely loud between the crickets, the tree frogs, and the cicadas. It's almost deafening. One night, not too long after we moved in, I had forgotten something in my car and headed outside to get it. Now, the first thing that struck me as odd was that my dog wouldn't go outside with me. But this night, as I held the door open, she looked out and then looked up at me like, nope, I'm not going out there. So I walked out and shut the door behind me. The second thing that caught me off guard was that there was not a peep. It was dead silent. I shrugged this off, walked down my front steps, and headed down to my car. When I had gotten about 10 foot from the car, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I felt as though something was watching me. I looked around but saw nothing. After I reached in my car for what I had forgotten to grab earlier, I had this feeling like something was moving towards me. I took a step back and checked around me. Suddenly, I heard one of the hedges next to me that lined the walkway to our front door rattle. At first, I thought it was a rabbit that I had spooked. as I had seen one just earlier in the day, right there where it was. A few seconds later, I heard a large rock about the size of a cantaloupe landing a few feet from me. It hit the walkway and bounced into the shrub. I drew my gun and called out and said, "Whoever this was is about to get shot." After a few seconds of nothing, I began to think that maybe this was some local teenager messing with the new people. I holstered my sidearm, turned, and started walking back to my front door. Almost as soon as I turned towards my house, I heard this deep panting sound. It sounded like a huge dog. But what made me move back to my front door was that it sounded like it was right behind me. I leaped up onto my porch, turned and drew my gun again, expecting something right there, but again, there was nothing. A couple weeks later, I was on my porch at night, sitting on the bench with my wife. She got up and walked inside to get something, and as soon as she shut the door, I heard that panting sound again. I couldn't see anything, yet this sounded like it was right on top of me. The sound was coming from everywhere, and it was very loud. Again, I couldn't see anything, so I noped it back into my house. Now, at this point, I was questioning moving there, but after nothing else happened, I just let it go. So a month or so later, it was a rainy, stormy night. This was around 9 p.m., and my wife and I enjoy listening to the rain, talking about how relaxing the rain is. Growing up in Oregon, I loved the rain, and for the past 10 years, we lived in Vegas, where it would dump an entire year of rain in one day, then be bone dry for the rest of the year. For my wife, who grew up in Nevada, rain was such a rare thing. She loved going outside and watching the rain. So for us, this was an enjoyable experience. Except this night in particular, things took a weird turn. As we were sitting there talking about the rain and relaxing, my wife stopped me and said, "Did you hear that?" I said, "No, what did you hear?" She said, "I swear it sounded like a small child calling for help out in the woods behind the house." I said, "No, I didn't hear anything." So after a few moments of us listening intently, she said, "There it is again." I said, "I didn't hear a thing, sweetie. Are you sure you're not just hearing things?" She looked at me offended that I didn't hear anything and said, "No, I'm positive. How could you not hear that? It was our son. I think he's out there and got lost." I said, "No, he's in the house, sleeping on the couch." We then both looked through the blinds that were open right behind us, and we could see all our children lying there. She said, "That's so weird. I swear it sounds like our son." I said, "Well, it isn't him. He's right there. So I didn't hear anything." She then stands up and says, "Wow, he's crying out for help. I need to go look for him." Now, at that point, if you knew my wife, you'd know she's creeped out by the woods and wouldn't be caught dead walking in them during the daylight, let alone at night. I grabbed her hand and said, I've been listening intently. There's nobody out there crying for help. You need to stay here. Now, at this point, I'm getting worried about her. She was acting completely out of character. Not to mention that at this time, she was 8 months pregnant with our baby daughter. She then says, "What if there's some child out there lost in the woods?" I said, "Well, first off, I'd be able to hear them too. Secondly, there are no other kids around here for miles, and odds of them being lost 10 to 100 feet from our house, it's like a Christmas tree, is nil." She then says, "I know, but what if it is a child?" Before I could say anything, she stood up and started walking toward the stairs. I jumped up, grabbed her hand again, and said, "No, you're not. Get in the house. I don't know what's going on, but you need to go inside." She then complies, and we both go inside. I didn't know what it was, but it freaked me out. So a few months after this, just as it was getting dark outside, I heard the front door to our house open and got up to investigate. Now, we have autistic 6-year-old twins, and we have the door set so they can't open it without us being there. So to hear this sound, it could only have been my wife. But what was weird was the fact that she usually doesn't go outside while I was saying something to me. I walked out front and saw my wife walking down to our private road towards the drive on the side of our house. I asked her what she was doing, and she said she was sitting on the back patio and kept hearing a baby crying out in the woods. I said, seriously, and you just decided to walk off into the woods to investigate? She then looks out into the woods and says, see, there it is again. Again, I didn't hear anything. But what I did notice was that it was completely silent again. I told her, just like before, the chances of a baby being out in the woods outside our house is slim, and she needed to get back in the house. She said, what if someone left a baby out there? I said, well, if that were true, I'd hear it too. Now, at this point, I was starting to worry about my wife's mental health. I asked her to see a psychiatrist, and she did. Now, looking back, I feel bad about this, knowing what I know. A key to this moment was that my wife had just given birth to a baby girl a month before. So a few days after this, we were out front on the porch. It was early evening, and I had just mowed the lawn that day, and our 3-year-old son was riding around his little car in front of the house. Now, he knows he's not allowed outside of a certain area that we mapped off. He loves playing outside, but with the road 50 feet from our front porch, we must be careful, as a lot of boaters will fly through after drinking all day on their boats. As we were talking, we were both keeping an eye on him. A neighbor drives by and stops to say hello for a second. This interaction took approximately 8 seconds, as all they said was, how are things? We said good, and they told us that they'd stop by later as his wife got something for the kids. It happens to be one of their teachers in school. And we said, okay, great. And he drove off. I looked over where my son was, and he was gone. I called out his name and ran over to the side of the house and could hear his car on our side drive. I scolded him for leaving the area, and he said something in his 3-year-old gibberish and pointed to the woods outside our house, or behind our house. I told him that he had 5 seconds to get back up onto the front of the house or else. And he adamantly pointed back to the direction of the woods and kept trying to tell me something. I looked off in the direction of the woods and just assumed he saw a deer or squirrel or something and wanted to see it up close. I walked him back up to the front of the house, and he cried the whole way there. He got really upset that I wouldn't let him go into the woods, but I just wrote this off as him being curious, as most 3-year-old boys are. Now, this instance isn't isolated, as our twins have done similar things, but nothing quite as extreme as this. There have been nights where we had just laid down for the night, and I heard a loud bang on the side of our house, on the wall between our bed. It was so loud that I jumped up and looked out the window. Our floodlight had come on, but I could see nothing. Now, the weird part about this is that our bedroom sits about 12 feet from the ground level, as we have a full-size basement that's cinder blocked. I put on my slippers and grabbed one of my 12-gauge shotguns and walked outside to investigate. It was dead silent again. The floodlight that was on the side of the house had clicked off at this point, so I walked over to the end of the deck and shined my light around the yard. There was nothing. I walked around the house and shined the light around intently. As I approached the back side of the house, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It felt like someone was watching me. I shined the light up in the trees, but again, nothing. I rounded the corner, and the first thing I noticed was that my 3 dogs who were in their area weren't making a peep. Now, our dogs had no filter and would bark at anyone and anything, including me. So to see them all hiding with their tails between their legs, not making a peep, had me worried. As I kept walking, suddenly the crickets and frogs started making sounds again. It was as if someone had flicked on a switch. I walked back into the house and told my wife that I hadn't seen anything. She shrugged and said, okay, if our dogs were okay. Due to the circumstances that night, I decided to let the dogs in and sleep with us. This very same thing had happened on all 4 exterior walls of our house. It's random and annoying, but just like this instance, every time nothing is going on outside. There had been times when we were sitting in the house, and as I was watching a movie, my wife would walk over to me and say, "Did you call me?" I said, "No." And she said she swears she heard me call her name in her ear. She said that it was my voice, but she didn't understand because it sounded so close. And I was a good 20 feet away from her in my recliner. The important part of this was that she was sitting at the table and doing something, and the sliding door to the backyard was open behind her. Now, our back patio sits about 20 feet off the ground, and it's like a balcony, so there's no stair access outside. I think the previous owner built it to barbecue. There have been several instances where she would say she heard someone whisper in her ear, but she wouldn't make out the sound. Again, I kept thinking she was going crazy, but as you will see, I think all of this is tied into this final moment where things are revealed. The last thing I want to mention before we get into what just happened is that I have a shooting range built behind my workshop on the opposite side of our property next to the main road. It is kind of on a downslope, but it works perfectly for what I need it for. The range itself is cut straight into the woods, going down about 100 yards or so. When you're at the downrange, you have woods surrounding you except back up to my shop. I have to say, it's always felt creepy when I'm dealing with my targets or milling. When you're down there, it feels like you're miles from anyone. So one day, about 5 p.m., I was sighting a new rifle scope. The sun was still up, but I was going to start to fade soon, so I knew this was going to be my final test. Up until this point, nothing happened while I was making my multiple trips downrange other than this feeling of uneasiness. Now, as I got downrange, I kept getting this feeling like someone or something was watching me. I looked around but didn't see anything. As I was placing stickers over my previous shot, I heard something big off to the side of me. It sounded like a large branch had snapped off a tree. Now, if you've been in the Tennessee woods, you know there are a lot of branches fall off trees randomly out of nowhere. So this is nothing new, except this time it was very loud and sounded like a fresh, strong wood. So that makes any sense. I turned and looked, but again, couldn't see anything. I started walking back up to my rifle, and I swore I heard someone right behind me. I turned around, but again, saw nothing. As I started to walk again, I heard this deep growl. It was deep and loud, and what's worse is that it was all around me. I turned around facing the range and started walking backwards. The thought of some rabid dog charging out of the bushes had me freaked out, so running wasn't a good idea. I slowly walked backward up the hill to my rifle, but nothing happened. I grabbed my rifle and sprayed the target with rapid fire, hoping to scare off whatever was stalking me. I left 10 rounds in the mag and grabbed my rifle bag and quickly walked back up to the house. I never told my wife about this as I didn't want to freak her out. So fast forward about a year later from when we moved in, and my niece is staying with us as a live-in nanny to earn money over the summer break from college. We were on our way back from the store, and about a mile from my house, I saw 2 eyes reflecting in the headlight coming from a wide tree on the side of the road just ahead. It had caught my attention because they were higher than a deer, but a different color and size. Just as I had said, "What is that?" and squinted, they vanished. I had commented that it was almost as if it had known I could see its eyes and moved. The color was kind of golden green, but they resembled the mannerism of a large cat as they felt They felt ominous. It's hard to explain, but I shrugged it off as we were passing the tree and saw nothing. So a few moments later, we arrived at the house. As we were getting the bags out of my car, my 3-year-old son came bolting out of the house, excited to see me. As I was waiting to help her carry in her bags, I heard my dog growl. I looked in the direction she was looking at my neighbor's property across the street. Now, what I saw has kept me up all night. Up until this point, I have always been skeptical as I never seen anything with my own eyes. Even with that had happened to me the year prior, I still had my doubts that it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Now, my street is kind of a spread out neighborhood. Each house sits on several acres, and at the end of the road is Kentucky Lake near Land of the Lakes recreational area. My neighbor's house sits adjacent to my house on about an acre lot. Directly in front of my house is a wall of wood, and directly behind my house is several thousand acres of untouched forest. Now, I was looking across the street to my neighbor's property. I saw a large dark figure between the trees at first. The movement caught me off guard, and it looked like something big moving quickly on all fours. Then, when it came out into clear view, it stood up and walked like a man. At first, I didn't know what to make of it. It was very tall, but what was strange was the distance it was covering, and in the fact that when it was in the front of the shed, I swear I could see through it. It was walking quickly, but moving faster than any person could ever sprint. More importantly, there was no sound. It was like it was phasing in and out of reality as it moved. I said, "What the hell is that?" I realized that it was looking directly at us. It had moved at an angle quickly from us to minimize its time out in the open, and moved as quickly as it could while still being silent. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I realized that whatever it was stalking us. I told my niece to get in the house now. I grabbed my son and booked it inside. I grabbed my AR-15 with a short scope and came back outside to see my niece still grabbing stuff out of her car. Knowing I told her firmly and clearly to get in the house, her disregard for my command annoyed me, but still I watched over her without saying a word. Now, as she was slowly walking, she turned towards the woods across the street from my house and suddenly bolted for the house. She ran up the steps in a panicked state. I asked her what she saw, and her face was pale as a ghost. She said, "I heard something big in the woods walking loudly on the leaves, and then I turned toward it and I heard a deep guttural growl." I asked her why she didn't come when I told her, and she said she thought that I was talking to my son. I told her what I had seen, and she wanted to get a closer look to see if she could see something. I told her that it was not a good idea, and she went anyway. As she was walking down the walkway, I heard dry leaves crunching in the woods across the street. I told her to stop and come take a flashlight. Now, at this point, she's about 6 foot away from my wife's SUV. As she turned and started walking back to me, I caught a glimpse of something gray and hairy bolt from behind the SUV back across the street into the woods. Now, my porch is a raised porch, and our SUV is about 6.5 feet tall. And whatever this was cleared about 45 feet in what looked like a single jump. It moved like lightning. Whatever it was, it wanted my niece. It jumped back behind the car out of my line of sight and was waiting for her. She still doubted my warnings, grabbed the flashlight and walked back toward the car. As she entered my driveway, she stopped dead in her tracks and leaned forward as she could see something. I asked her what she saw. She turned and ran back up to the porch with a terrified look on her face, saying, "Nope, nope, nope," repeatedly. She said it was a figure hiding inside of a tree and that she saw its eyes. I asked her what they looked like, and all she could say was that they looked dull red at first, but as she got closer, they looked dead. I said, "What do you mean dead?" And she said that the pupils they look kind of gray in a way eyes look when they go blind. She said it was dark gray, and she swears she could see through it almost like a dark cloud. She wanted to go out again and took a step down the steps, and as she did it, revealed itself from behind a tree. I said, "Get inside," and went in and locked the door. It looked like a tall human-shaped being. It was tall and looked ominous. So the next morning, we did a height comparison to the tree limb. She saw it stand over and put its height to around 9 feet tall, and its eyes were about six inches apart. At this point, I don't know what this thing was. Now, after doing some research, I think this thing was a crawler. I looked to see if there had been any other sightings in Benton County, but nothing. More importantly, I swear it would phase in and out almost like a shadow person, but bigger and more obvious. One of the things that makes it fit is that it can communicate telepathically. This explains why everyone was hearing something that nobody else could hear. Secondly, it had playback-like communication. So when I heard a dog panting, it was probably one of my dogs it had heard. My wife was hearing our son crying for help as if he had fallen and cried. The baby crying would be our newborn baby who she had just given birth to recently, and must have heard me call my wife's name and kept telepathically calling my wife's name with my voice. Another thing that my niece had said that night was that she felt compelled to go back outside to it. She said she felt like this thing was communicating with her somehow, and it wanted her to go back outside. Now, the more I read about this thing, the more everything that's been happening over the past year makes sense. One thing that I find extra convincing is that down the road towards the lake, there's a property that is barbed wired off and is a wall of forest with no driveway. A lot of the property down our road is underdeveloped and it's owned land. And in one of the trees, there's a large old sign that says, "Screamer lives here," with an arrow pointing back into the woods. And I must admit, when I first saw this sign, I laughed, thinking maybe the owner screamed at trespassers who entered his property and teenagers who put up the sign to mess with him. When I did a satellite search of our neighborhood, that entire area of the road has no houses or trails or anything. It is just pure forest for as far as the eye can see. One of the things that this thing is said to do is make us scream when threatened. Now that you understand my story, I doubt this is the ending. The next question is, what can we do? I don't want my wife or kids to disappear one day. And if there's any more than one of these things out there, that it kind of makes missing 411, it makes a whole lot of sense. I feel perplexed and scared as to what I can do. Any advice? I try to keep this post alive, and I try to keep my communication with you going with any new experience. So that's the end of part one, because there's another part. Just wanted to take a break here. Now, he did get back to me. I saw where he did post at another location later on. I had known he was posting somewhere else, but I was able to eventually talk to him. So we keep going. Now, this was about, I guess he got in contact again about a month later. He states, "As I was sitting there that night, I did catch some strange sounds on camera. As well as when I passed an area with my flashlight, there appeared to be something, but when I came back, there was nothing. Again, due to the lighting, it's very hard to make out. I haven't felt comfortable going out since. My niece just came back from a week's vacation in Florida, so we plan to sit out there a couple of nights and try to see if we can get anything. This stuff has been happening for a while now, but it was random and far apart. Now, ever since this last incident, I have seen things that I can't explain, but they seem to be happening almost daily now. So last night when my niece arrived, we went out on the front porch to welcome her. I did notice something that looked like a face staring at me. But what was weird was that as I was staring at it, it moved back into the shadows without moving, if it makes any sense. We had an interview for a podcast and plan to do a few more. There's a story of a man in Georgia who I believe saw the same thing I did that night. The one thing that I would like to add to this update is that I hadn't thought was connected happened about 2 to 3 weeks ago. Now, my wife and I had been in an argument about something silly. She decided to walk back into our woods to clear her head. I was on the back patio when I noticed her walking down to our shooting range. I asked her where she was going. She said to cool off. Now, I know the chances of something happening to her were slim, but I found it odd that she'd choose to go into the woods rather than simply walk down the road. I quickly got dressed and went down to try and bring her back. I went to the end of the range and called out her name. After a few minutes of calling out, I heard nothing, not a peep or a twig or anything. Now, the weird part is that it is impossible to move around those woods without making any sound, especially for her. I was worried that she was walking too far, but I had to get back into the house as our children were alone. It freaked me out because it was as if she had just vanished. I went back into the house and debated calling someone, but figured I'd give her a little more time. I went back to the back patio and waited. After about an hour, I started to get worried. I called out her name again and decided that I would call if she hadn't returned at an hour or in a half mark. After about 20 minutes went by, she came walking back out of the woods. Angry that she had worried me so much, yet also relieved, I asked her what she was thinking. She said, "What?" She walked back up into the house. She came in and looked at me like I was crazy. I said, "Didn't you hear me calling out to you?" She said she only heard me once, and she replied. Now, this is where it gets crazy. She said, "I have only been gone for 15 minutes. Why are you freaking out?" When I told her that she'd been gone for an hour and 20 minutes, she didn't believe me. She also said that when she went down there, she didn't go very far. But when she turned around, she started walking and got worried that she was lost. She said that she didn't recognize where she was, but something told her to keep walking. She said it felt strange and that the air felt different. When she came back out of the woods, she was relieved to see the house. Now, the part that upsets me the most about this was where she said she was is impossible. I was standing 20 to 30 foot away from that spot. If she had been there, not only would I have seen her, but I could have talked. I mean, she could have talked to me in a normal voice. More concerning is that you can see the house from that spot, and how she felt lost is mind-boggling. I don't know what it was. I thought that again, she was just losing her mind, but I feel that what happened to her was real. I plan to go back to where she was with her to prove that you can see the house from there, but I want her to show me exactly where she went, as well as talk me through everything. I know some people must think that we're crazy, but I promise that I will do whatever it takes to get proof and keep you updated as to what we figure out. I know this is turning into a book, but I want to be detailed as possible. So I got another update later after that on June 24th, 2022. That was about maybe a couple weeks after that last part. So he states, weird things keep happening. Today, my 3-year-old son is playing in the back patio a few feet away from us, and suddenly the dogs inside jump and start barking. One of our dogs, Duke, who is on the patio with him, comes bolting into the door. I jump up and see what's going on, and my son is pointing at the tree line saying, "Werewolf, Daddy, werewolf." And my son loves watching videos of werewolves for kids for some reason. I would normally put this off as nothing, but if you saw his face, you would know that he was serious. Plus, with the way my dogs reacted, he had to have seen something. I pulled out my phone and began recording. He kept saying, "Daddy, look, werewolf in the bushes." I tell him I can't see anything, but I can hear something really big in the leaves. So about 2 weeks later, on July 9th, 2022, he wrote, "I have just had a lot on my plate. My niece has quit. She said she couldn't handle all the stuff that's been happening to her. Everything was fine for a while. She stayed indoors for the most part. We went out on the porch one night with the flashlight and camera, hoping to catch something. We kept hearing things in the brush, which could be anything. After a while of not seeing anything, we went back inside. I said my prayers and slept like a baby. My niece, however, did not. She woke up late the next day and seemed a bit jumpy. I asked her, what's wrong? She said that she did sleep well as something was outside her window. It took a bit of prodding to get her to talk about it. She said she could hear something big outside her window, but every time she looked, she couldn't see anything. She said she heard weird voices that she couldn't describe. She came out into the living room to see if I was still up, but I was fast asleep. She decided to go back into her room and go to sleep watching YouTube on her phone. She said that she was almost asleep when she felt something standing right behind her. She turned around and there was nothing. She said she kept having the feeling, but brushed it off as her imagination. That was until about 3 a.m. when she woke up. She said she had her phone on the windowsill playing a video. She had the same feeling as before, but this time it was very intense, like whatever it was wanted to devour her. She turned around quickly and saw what looked like a shadow disappear into the wall in a blink of an eye. She told me this kept happening until she passed out late in the morning. I told her that it was weird as we had never experienced anything like that in the house before. We have had weird things happen, like things disappear for a while, then reappear days or months later in the exact spot they were last seen. She said it felt like whatever this was, it made her feel like it wanted to hurt her. I told her to keep me updated and let me know if anything else happens. So a few days later, she asked if she can use the hot tub that's outside. I explained that it's off as we can't afford to heat it. When we get over to it, I open it to look inside. To my disbelief, not only is it on, but the water looks great, minus a little cleanup that needed to be done. As I'm walking around, suddenly I hear a loud thump behind me, like a log falling onto the ground or a big boulder hitting the ground. Imagine an engine block falling 20 feet into a soft soil. It made me jump. I turned around but couldn't see anything as the brush was too thick. I kept helping her work in the spa, and she says she's going inside and get changed so she can get in. I look around and realize it's getting dark, so I don't want to be out there. I bend over to work on getting the filter clean, and I hear something it sounds like something big snapping branches and charging at me. It made me jump and then run to the back door. I turn around to see what it was, and it's nothing. I walk back into the house and walk upstairs. I told her I heard something out there, and she looked at me for a minute, then said, well, I want to get in and relax. She asked if I can leave the back patio door open so if she needs me, she can call. But according to her, she enjoyed the spa without incident. Every day I notice her getting more anxious and less willing to talk about it. She says every night something new happened to her, but when I ask her to elaborate, she refuses. A few nights later, I walk out onto the porch and notice it was dead quiet again. I asked her to come out on the porch with me, but she said she's tired and wants to call her boyfriend and go to bed. Now, my wife gets up early and takes the kids, and it's my job to handle the night shift. So she's in bed at this point. I decided that I didn't have the guts to do this alone, so I put on a movie and relaxed in my recliner. I ended up falling asleep and wake up at 3 a.m. to a noise coming from my niece's room. It sounds like a deep voice, and I knocked on the door. I called out several times, but got nothing in response. I figured it must be her video and decided to let it be. I head to bed, and just as I start to pass out, another loud bang happens. I wake up and hear what sounds like something skittering on the wall outside of my bedroom. Understand that this is way up in the air and physically impossible. I look out the window but don't see anything. After going out and checking on this bang multiple times over the last year, I see nothing. I decide to forget it and go back to sleep. Excuse me a second. The next day, my niece comes out and tells me that she had a shadow thing happen again. Except this time she left her light on. She said she woke up to get that feeling again. She said that when she opened her eyes, she could see an extremely tall, shadowy figure standing over top of her. She said it was moving closer to her, and just as she started to see the details of its face, she turned around in a panic, but nothing was there. She said the eyes haunted her, but didn't want to elaborate any further. The next morning, for the first time, my niece was up bright and early. I noticed she looked anxious, but she told me that she was headed for the 4th of July weekend and would be back on Tuesday. I asked her if she was okay, and she said yes, and quickly walked out the door. Later that day, I got a call from my sister telling me that she wouldn't be coming back. I asked her if everything is okay, and she says yes, that she just wants to enjoy the rest of the summer. A little while later, I got a call from a niece telling me that she doesn't want to work here anymore and she can't handle the anxiety from whatever is out there. She doesn't elaborate more than that, but whatever has been going on in her room has her petrified. I checked into her room and noticed that she'd been sleeping on with one of the windows wide open. This window is perfectly accessible from the outside. I don't know what's been going on with her, but whatever it is, it looks like it could have been coming into the room. So fast forward to the 4th of July. I do fireworks out in front of our property by the road facing the woods. Now, due to what's been happening at night, I decided to do them before it got too dark outside. We lit our fireworks, and just as it started getting dark, I'd get everybody inside. After a couple of hours, I remembered that my hose was still on the ground and lying out by the road. I headed out to clean everything up and put the hose away. While I'm doing this, I notice it's dead silent again, minus the distinct sound of fireworks. The hairs on the back of my neck go up, and I get the feeling that I'm being watched again. I hurried and coiled the hose and ran back into the house. I swear I'm starting to wonder if it's just my mind playing tricks on me at this point. Now, that was the last update I got from this guy. I personally contacted him and offered any help I could or what the team could provide. But since that last correspondence, nothing else had occurred. So your guess is as good as mine. I don't know what became of it, but it's kind of a creepy story. And I think you'd agree. Now, I have one more account, and this is not long, so you can start putting your questions up. Because I titled this "The Thing at the Land Between the Lakes." I received a telephone call from an eyewitness in Tennessee on Monday, February 26, 2018 at 6:15 a.m. The account he gave me was one of the strangest I've ever heard or read. In the early summer of 1985, the witness, R.O., and two other friends were in the Land Between the Lakes National Recreation Area. They were exiting the park while traveling south on Route 49, which is the Woodlands Trace Byway, towards Dover, Tennessee. The three men were sitting together in a Ford Ranger. The driver, J.M., and R.O. sit beside each other. The other friend, TG, was sitting on the passenger side. It was early evening and still light. Now, as they approached a curve on the road, an older model gray-colored sedan was in the opposite lane coming towards them. The sedan slowed as if to contact the witnesses. Now, as JM and RO looked at the other driver, they were soon horrified at the sight. RO stated that the other driver had wild bushy hair and wore glasses. When the person turned their heads toward them, the eyes appeared to be oversized. The driver's window was open. Suddenly, this being, or humanoid, extended its head out the window as the neck stretched to an incredible length. The face shape shifted like on a bizarre contorted appearance. The head was now upside down and looking at them, at the same time making loud woo, woo, woo and howling sounds. It was a dreadful vision. Now, RO and JM were totally shocked and in utter fear to the point of tears. JM accelerated away from the other vehicle. At the same time, the other friend, TG, never reacted to the sight of this being. He was either asleep or was immobilized somehow. He had no idea what had just taken place. The encounter was so disturbing to RO that he literally begged GM to turn around and go back so that RO could kill the being with his rifle. RO told him that he had never felt so repulsed before and that he had an overwhelming reaction and that he must eliminate this abomination. JM refused to do so and continued driving away towards town. Now, RO stated the incident remains fresh in his mind, that he will always be fearful that he may once again encounter this being. He asked me to contact JM to verify the event, which I did, though he refused to elaborate on the account. I had no idea what these men confronted that day, but I'd appreciate any further information I can get. So if anybody's listening to this on YouTube and you heard of something like this happen, please contact me. So folks, that's all of it. So let's see what questions you got. I want to thank Nancy Malcolm, Mortal Clown, Robo 1776, and Bear Zip for their donations. Much appreciated. Robo 1776 asked, any call in or report on human enabled portal at the time the cryptid is around? I don't know. I kind of believe that there was a portal in this, and of course I put it in the title. When his wife went out there and seemingly got lost but couldn't hear him, or I don't know. I don't know where it resulted in that. I don't know if he went back out there to check it out or not, but I would have to believe it's a portal or something, or some type of time slip. But it's awful strange, no doubt. So let me see what else we got here. Oh, we got a heck of a crowd in here tonight. Okay, race fan. Put your questions in caps. Thank you for letting people know. Just bear with me till I pull them down. A lot of people in the chat tonight. Can Squatch, does this property back up to the LBL? Yeah, it does. I looked on the map. The back part of his property was about 2 miles from the LBL, or the Kentucky Lake there at the LBL. So, yeah. Now, of course, most of the LBL is located in Kentucky, but it does extend up into south into Tennessee. But honestly, some of the stuff that I've heard from this guy, I have heard before. It's a strange area. It's just so much weird stuff that goes on. I may have to dig out some other accounts. I know I've got them in my archives somewhere, but this the LDL is quite strange. And people have been trying to get me to talk about this for a long time. And in fact, for those people who are not familiar with the original legend or story or whatever it is, I will I can bring that up at some point and talk. It's a long account, but it's supposed to be the original account. I don't know if I really believe it or not, but I do know there's a lot of weird things that happen in that location. Now, Sasquatch at west side of Kentucky Lake. I would think I would think it'd be on the west side. Yeah, it was on the west side actually, if I remember right. So yeah. Anybody got any other questions? Okay. Well, I want to thank each and all of you for watching and chatting. And if you did donate, one just popped up. I'll grab it. Daniel Garcia, do reports of portals involve hearing a sound of a trapdoor shutting? I've heard that before. Normally, I had been near portals, and to me, they kind of leave a buzzing sound. I have never heard of any type of door or trapdoor shutting, honestly. Robo 1776, maybe it's me. The LBL has more cryptids than the Skinwalker Ranch. What do you think? I don't know. The whole Skinwalker Ranch thing is kind of bizarre to me. I don't know what's really going on there. Is it more of a UFO thing, alien thing out there? Possibly, but I did talk about before about an attack. A boy had an attack out there by the gate, not far from Skinwalker Ranch. The LBL, there's just a whole lot of weird stuff that comes out of there. So I don't know. It may have more. Wow. This is from Destituterum. That last being may have been a Kushtaka. Well, Kushtaka up in Alaska. It's kind of for people who don't know what a Kushtaka is. People describe it as a large otter. I mean, 6-7 foot tall otter that has supernatural abilities and scared the bejesus out of the natives up there. There have been stories about them going out in their snowmobiles at night on the snow, and these things chasing them. It's an interesting story. I've got a couple Kushtaka stories, so maybe I'll do that one day. Heard of the Darrow, Scott Baker. I don't know what that is. Sorry. Sasquatch. Has owner given his thoughts on what he thinks is behind what's going on the property? No, he was just dumbfounded. I talked to him, and he still didn't really know what was going on. The thing about the werewolf. Now, of course, for you folks that know anything about the LBL, there's been reports of cryptid canines there for many years. So, quite frankly, I don't know what the child saw, but maybe he did see a cryptid canine. 1776 ops. Lon, where did you think the crawlers are coming from? There's been more and more sightings lately. I've been sightings going on for about a decade now. I don't know where they're coming from, actually. I wrote the book Meme Humanoids. I think a lot of these are some kind of mind manifested or thought form beings, possibly. But there are other instances where people don't even know anything about these things and they show up. So I don't know. Some people have the theory that they come from underground somehow, but I really haven't seen any evidence of that. So I don't know what these crawlers really are. Hopefully we'll get more information as time goes by, but they show up anywhere. I mean, not just in the woods or in the wilderness. They show up in cities and everything. So Just terror. It was driving. Can shapeshift, maybe drove from Alaska. Yeah, I guess. You're talking about the Kostaka. Paul Smith. Have you heard of Martin Grew's account on the LBL? Yeah, I have. I don't know what to think about it. You know, I've heard so many crazy stories come out of that place. It's hard to tell what exactly people are seeing or what's going on. But I'll dig some things up. Lon had, this is Jose Sanchez. Lon, have you heard of the book On the Crawler by Missy Layton? Yeah, I have, but I haven't read it. Okay. Well, I want to thank each and everybody for watching and chatting. And if you donate, it's truly appreciated. Your support definitely what makes all this happen. So please like, subscribe, and share. And if you have a sighting or encounter report you'd like to be considered for the personal report show, or even posted on Phantoms Monsters, feel free to contact me at Lon Strickler at phantomsmonsters.com. So until we meet again, I want to say I hope you have a great weekend. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon. Good night.